Welcome this edition of the Fourth Estate. Congratulations to the PLE candidates who got their results released late in the week, and of course a week that has been packed with activity. The court in Congo finally announced Felix Tshilombo Tshisekedi as the president, validly elected in that country, though the major opponent, Mate Fayulu, I have been pronouncing this from what I learned from Kasim Kaira, has called his supporters to demonstrate in the country. How that situation will be turning out, we'll be watching and we'll be discussing a bit of that on the Fourth Estate tonight. We'll also be discussing another terrorist attack in neighboring Kenya, in Nairobi, at a top hotel and office complex at Dusit, leaves 21 people dead. We'll be discussing what's been going on in that country and leading to so many attacks. If you look at the list, they've been increasing, and the casualty figures are actually high. In Garissa alone, I think about 157 to 160 people? 147 people were killed, mainly students of Garissa University. In the Westgate attack, the death toll was above 60, and at the Dusit Hotel, the death toll stands at 21. But all the terrorists, or all those who carried out the attack, the 6 of them were also put out of action. We'll be discussing that as well. And we will discuss a bit on, we hosted 2 weeks ago, I think about 2 weeks ago, we hosted the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, but activity at Makerere University has continued, and the latest is the suspension of the chairperson of the Makerere University Academic Staff Association, Dr. Deus Kamunyu. We'll be discussing that as well. To help me navigate through that tonight, I have my colleague, Onapito Ekomoloit. He's Legal and Corporate Affairs Director at Nile Breweries AB InBev. Ona, always a pleasure to be with you here.
Good evening, viewers, and good evening, fellow panelists.
I have Lillian Drabo Amari. Lillian is a lawyer. Lillian, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, viewers.
You're Chapter 4?
No, I work with Kirundan Wasige Advocates.
Kirundan Wasige Advocates, yes. You occupy the same building, so that's why I was making the mistake.
Yes.
Very nice to have you, Lillian.
Thank you, Charles.
And bringing back Kasim Kaira. He's Bureau Chief for Azam TV, in charge of East and Central Africa?
It's Great Lakes region.
Great Lakes region.
Yes.
Very nice to have you.
Thank you very much,
And
Charles,
we're also being joined online by a journalist from Kenya who was at the center of, covering the attack at the hotel, the Dusit Hotel on Tuesday. Ken Mijungu is a reporter with NTV Kenya, which is a sister station across the border. He's online. Ken, I understand we have you online? Hello, good evening, Ken. Ken, do we have you online?
Good evening to you.
Good evening, Ken. How is Nairobi?
Nairobi is currently okay.
Okay.
Nairobians are recovering from the shock of last Tuesday, but we are okay in Nairobi.
Okay, that's great to hear. We have in studio here my colleagues Onapito Ekomoloit. I have Lillian Drabo Amari, she's a lawyer, and I have Kasim Kaira. So 3 journalists in studio here with 1 lawyer, and of course you joining us. Let's start with Kenya. Ken, you were at the Dusit Hotel. You covered that attack. Could you bring us up to speed, especially on the casualty numbers? Could you bring us to speed also on what actions the authorities have taken so far?
All right. We'll go with the official report from the government, and that is 21 people died, including foreigners. And Kenyans also lost their lives. There are some people who are yet to be identified, but they are of African descent. So you know they're Africans, but you don't know their countries. So I think in the last week before we went into the weekend, they've been trying to establish their nationality. The foreigners have been properly identified, and also the Kenyans have been identified. And your other question is about what the authorities have taken. But first, I'd like to say, apart from that, I think the bigger picture that Kenyans are looking at right now is the number of people who are rescued is about 700, also confirmed report. There are hundreds of people who are in that location, who are in that area. So there were a lot of people, some managed to escape straight after the shooting and explosions began. Most of them were rescued by the security operators here, which was a joint effort. And of course, the government now has gone to phase 2 of this, and phase 2 of this now is the investigations which has been taken by the DCI. And suffice to say at this point that, of course, there's a lot of things that have been happening since the investigations began. Today we have a list of about 5 or 6 men and a lady who are on the police radar, who are wanted in connection with this attack. And of course, the roots of some of these people who are involved in the attack, some who died already, have been traced to some parts of central Kenya. The others have been traced to the border points of like Isiolo. Their roots have been traced there. Others have been cohabiting and living with Kenyans or married to Kenyans, and they've been living as near as Nairobi and 4 months. Yes, that's where we are with the investigations right now.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Ken, one of the major questions people in the region are asking is why does Kenya seem to be so vulnerable to these attacks? Because if you look at the numbers, they're staggering. Most of the people will pick out the big numbers. So people will pick out the attack at Westgate Mall in 2013. They will pick out the Mpeketoni attacks actually don't get as much attention as they should be getting, yet they were as gory as you can find. People will pick on the Garissa attack at that university because of the numbers and this latest attack. But if you look deeper, there are many more attacks that keep taking place that are low scale, if you would call it that way. Why is Kenya so vulnerable?
It's not only Kenya that is vulnerable. We live in a region that is surrounded by countries that have, for a long time, experienced a lot of instability. I'm talking about South Sudan. I'm talking about Somalia. And we have been hosting a lot of refugees. So there's a lot of influx of illegal arms in the country. Apart from that, there are other reasons that have been advanced. For example, the incursion of Kenya in Somalia back in 2011 that still continues, and the president has said that Kenyan soldiers will not be withdrawn out of Somalia. So that still continues. So most of the time when there is an attack, you hear that narrative that Kenyans need to leave Somalia. This is the reason why they're getting attacked from Somalia, because practically some of the attackers have that Somalia descent. So the other reason is that because they are in Somalia, they're conducting their security operation under AMISOM, then that is the reason why Kenya is being attacked. Aside from that, we're now coming to have the homegrown terrorists. Like two of the attackers, one was from Meru, the other one was from central Kenya. So that is also homegrown, which means now they're recruiting right inside Kenya and using Kenyans to attack other Kenyans. So all those three reasons have been advanced to explain why Kenya is being attacked in this manner. But all in all, this is a region that you know as much as I know, and the lawyers know there, and I'm also a lawyer, and the journalists have been working on this. So Kenya is in a region that is surrounded by a lot of political instability. So most of the time, this gets the way into the country. So even as we look at this, we know that that's one thing that puts us right in the middle of it. And it's well over attacks from ISIS, now al-Shabab, and any other militant group. But those reasons have been advanced specifically with legal analysts and security analysts in this country to inform the reason why Kenya might be taking the hit as much as we are doing right now. But remember, this is the first attack after 3 years, but a lot have been thwarted in the last few years also.
The other question is the response of the security forces in Kenya. None of these attacks has been resolved as quickly as you would expect. Each attack has taken more than 20 hours to be resolved by the security agencies. Are these the kind of questions you're putting to the president and to the leaders in your country, particularly the leaders of security, to say, do you think that the security forces are up to the game, one, to minimize death of innocent civilians, but two, to be able to resolve a situation quicker than it's been taking most of these, in most of these attacks?
All right, just to bring you up to speed, in tonight's broadcast at 9, we had fresh details that indeed there was intelligence about an imminent attack, and one of the areas that was listed was actually where this attack happened. That was 2 months ago. That's the D2 hotel and other locations around the CBD. So these have been on the radar and they've known it. But going back to your question about the response time in this, as much as the country will be prepared and the training and money has been pumped into this country to enhance security, these people come by surprise. It's always a surprise. Like, no one would have believed that D2, defeat D2 hotel, which is about 4 kilometers or less from State House and a similar distance far away from the CBD, would be attacked in that manner. No one believes. So when they come in a way that it's not detected. So the response this time was better than any other response, and I'll go step by step. Let me take you back to 2013. That's Westgate. That was the first major attack after the attack back in 1998. That was the first attack, and there was a lot of uncoordinated response in that, and you know what happened. The security tried to explain it the way they did, but you know what happened in 2013. Let's go to 2015. Garissa School, that was a university where there were students. They came in, killed the guards at the gate and got into the university. It was very early in the morning. The students were confused, and the response was kilometers away. By the time they were responding, the terrorists had escaped. The students who managed to escape had also escaped. But remember the number of casualties. Let's go to 2016. This was El-Ade. This was a military camp, and they were ambushed, and they tried what they could. But the casualty numbers, although it's been not clear also how many people died in El-Ade. Then let's come now to this D2 hotel. They began at around 3 p.m. By 3:30, the response had already been dispatched, and this can be explained by a lot of reasons, but the best reason to explain this is the preparedness that this country has had, because you could see the kind of response within the few minutes, within about 30 minutes, there was a lot of security presence there, and we managed to contain them. And this has been explained as the reason why there were minimal casualties, because the response was swift, and we had coordinated. There was even the Kenya Air Force was there, the KPF, the Air Defense Force was there, but the operation was conducted by West Squad, which means they had proper planning, and within 17 hours, actually, one of our reporters, Private Apollo, who was doing a different assignment around there, who was also caught in that mayhem, said by at least 4 p.m. the security personnel were present in their building, even though they were only evacuated at around 4 a.m. in the morning, but the security had surrounded the area and they were able to contain that violence. And that's how they managed to reduce the casualty numbers, and then the response from the emergency team and the rescue team was also swift, probably because of the proximity to town, probably because of the proximity to the center of power. But that is what happened. So the last part of the question is about if we have ever asked our security leaders or the security ministry or the president about this. This is something they've been talking about all along. And in the wake of this attack, with the investigation still going on, that particular question we're not able to fill it. But once the investigations or the final report is coming out, we'll be able to ask them why we always look like sitting ducks and we still lose Kenya. So yes, it's not been answered adequately, but what we know, and that is the bigger picture Kenya is looking at right now, the kind of response that we got and how many people they were able to save. Look at that. If you know that location, there are about 5 buildings. The 5 buildings, there is just space in the middle. If you are able to evacuate 700 people within that duration and save such lives, I think that's the bigger picture we're looking at. So at the far end as journalists, you have to hold them responsible and ask the question and want to understand what exactly usually happens. And yes, that question is going to be answered in future. But right now, they've said there's 2 weeks investigation and wait for those answers to come. And finally, we want to answer that last part of your question.
Thank you very much, Ken. If you stay online briefly, we will bring in my colleagues here. Gentlemen and lady, do you have any question for Ken at this moment, or we proceed with the discussion? Because we'll have to lose him at some time.
At some point, yeah.
Okay. Ken, thank you very much. We'll get back to you when we need you. We'll continue with the discussion. I hope you'll be watching from wherever you are, and congratulations for the work you're able to do to cover that.
I'm watching, and indeed, I'll be here.
Thank you very much. Let's bring the discussion back here. We've suffered one major attack in this country, which was the World Cup, the 2010 World Cup, July actually 11th, 2010 World Cup attack. Two locations were selected, one at the Chadondo Rugby grounds, which was the worst, and then at the Ethiopian band village band restaurant in Kabalagala. But security forces, security leaders in this country tell you that many plots have been stopped in the works before. We had those that string of grenade throwing around 2001, which was attributed to the ADF. But let's concentrate on the al-Shabab because they claimed responsibility for this. Honor. The Uganda deployed in Somalia in 2007. We've been there since then.
Yeah.
Kenya followed in 2011, 2012. But Kenya has been attacked so many times. And the question is, what is it that has not been done right to stem these attacks, to stop them in their tracks?
Yeah, first, Charles, this is a very tragic discussion. I mean, there are a lot of families that are grieving in Kenya, maybe even in Uganda, some are affected. So it's a very sad situation. And the moment it happens, your mind immediately swings to 2010. Are we out of the woods? Can it again happen in Uganda? It's difficult to say whether it can't happen. I mean, because much as the security forces can assure us, they had even assured us before 2010, there are moments when everyone almost literally goes to sleep. These people don't go to sleep. This is their day job. So it's always just a matter of saying, fingers crossed. But I think it begs a bigger question. Has al-Shabab been defeated? Is it being defeated? Will it be defeated? I think from the state actors, they'll always say al-Shabab has been defeated or is being rolled back. But that is purely defining the war from a perspective of geographical locations and whatever. But clearly you can see that this is an idea in some people's minds. It's a very wicked, evil idea, but it's alive. Because when these four were killed who attacked the Nairobi hotel, I think the Kenyan president came out, say we have put them out of action. It's no victory to me. Does anybody think these guys when they are expecting to come out alive?
No, one actually detonated the bomb.
They were committing an act of suicide. So it is so difficult to say whether you're actually defeating such a group who don't actually define victory by way of staying alive. They define victory by dying. So that's a very difficult thing. And we all define victory by inflicting death. Yeah. So now if you are giving someone something they actually want, it's a very difficult situation. I think the Somalia mission is very debatable because there were attacks before the mission. There are attacks after, so one can always tell you, even if we are not going there, these people will still attack. But there is also obvious evidence that the attacks have increased after their presence in Somalia. I mean, the question is really open-ended.
I can tell you for a fact that from the perspective of the Ugandan leadership, and especially the security leadership in this country, there has been considerable pressure from the international community for the African Union scale back or to actually begin considering a withdrawal from Somalia. The UPDF, which was the first to deploy and still has the largest contingent in that country, was pressured but has been arguing and saying, guys, look here, Somalia is not yet out of the woods. We still need to be here. And they were thinking, no, because there's a payment that comes out of it, there is regional politics and other things that the leaders who have deployed in Somalia are using it for leverage, then there is need to, I mean, those are excuses being given. But every territory, I have been told that the AMISOM forces retreated from, because there is a time when they retreated back to Mogadishu. Every territory they exited, al-Shabab occupied. And now they're finding, the reason UPDF has not yet started withdrawing from Somalia is partly because they had withdrawn back to Mogadishu, concentrate on a few key areas, left routes open, and now everybody's saying, wait a minute, where are we? Lillian, I want to come to you. after the 2010 attacks in this country, a number of people were rounded up.
Yes.
Some were picked from Kenya, others were picked from Tanzania, others were rounded up in this country. They went through a trial process. And one of the major questions were, how do you legally deal with terrorism or the threat of it without compromising rights of people who might actually be innocent in this? And the Ugandan trial was critical in this.
How do you deal with terrorism in such a situation where you don't compromise people's rights is a very hard question, especially when you're dealing with al-Shabab terrorists. Because these people, like Ona said, that they have no agenda, they don't care, their satisfaction is in causing chaos and killing other people. So when it comes to such situations, we need to invest a lot of money in carrying out these trials, carrying out the investigations, and understanding why these people carry out these attacks, which still is a little bit complicated to understand, because from my understanding, that most of these people that carry out these attacks are youths who have nothing to lose, who are not employed, who have no stable environment to survive in. So these are people who have been picked from childhood and indoctrinated and made to believe that by killing others, you're pleasing God. So until we get to that point where we actually try to understand who are these people, why do they do what they do, we will end up, and the fact that you cannot identify them immediately, will end up picking other people in the process. So some of it will be collateral damage, some of it will be an employment hazard or whatever it is, but we need to sit down and understand, why do these people do whatever they do? So until we understand that situation, there's lots of people that will be
Kasim, I want to
affected.
come to you. There is an international dimension to this. One is, at the same time when there was the Dusit attack, there was an attack by the ISIS.
ISIS, yes.
So it doesn't really matter. I mean, the evolution of these terrorist groups, if you do mapping on the African continent, they link into one another. You can extend that map into the Middle East. You can extend it into Europe, continental Europe. You can extend it to the United States of America. And you have an attack in Nairobi, which is a host of many regional offices. So the UN has a bigger presence in Nairobi. All the Western missions, the embassies have bigger presence in Nairobi than they have elsewhere. International bodies have bigger presence in Nairobi. And what is the missing link? What do you think was missing that you have these repeat attacks? And almost all of them, apart from hearing that those who participated in the attack were put out of action, and as Onapito has said, they actually put out of action because they went to be put out of action. That was the primary mission. So you can't say you have reached closure on any of them.
Well, first of all, listening to Ken in his explanation there, so far the idea has been that there was intelligence in the first place. This should be our starting point. The availability of intelligence, but intelligence which was not straightforward. What I've heard from Ken that was new for me since this attack happened is that the fact that even amongst the intelligence that was there, this very place that was attacked was amongst those that were mentioned.
Yes.
Quite often what happens is that with this intelligence, it comes from foreign missions. It's not within it's not within the countries themselves, our third world countries. You'll hear it's from the Americans, it's the French, it's the Russians. They would have, the Israelis, they will have intercepted particular communication in the process and then highlight it to governments. Now the issue is, one, availability of intelligence, but also two, the interpretation of intelligence. Now we've talked about the mapping of these attacks and how they seem to have a kind of a sequence or a synchronization of sorts. What has happened is that with countries since the declaration of the war on terror, unfortunately, there are particular things that have happened that governments have failed to address. As a result, they have actually provided ample recruiting ground for these particular groups. I happen to be a Muslim, and a Muslim with a clear symbol of Islam. The first thing that you happen is whenever such attacks happen, the first thing that comes to my mind is like, oh my God, let it not be a Muslim. And then the next thing is you hear Islamists, blah, blah. That really disheartens, because I'm saying it's not in my name, because if it's a person who wants to fast track their journey to heaven and therefore they have to go through that process, but in my name, then I have an issue with that. Because that is not my sort of thinking. That would not even be the Islamic way of thinking. So what countries have done since the September 11th attacks, because America now introduced a system where you are either with us or against us, and that was a clear Bush policy. So many countries now have sort of adopted that as a policy. As a result, whenever situations like this happens, you have massive arrests of Muslims, innocent or not innocent. They go through a process that takes forever. Their families that are suffering behind here start becoming, apprehensive. They start hating the government. For a person who has had their father in detention for 2 years, going through a trial that seems to take forever, not having been found guilty thus far, this now helps to radicalize the younger generation that is left behind. Look at a family of a man who has 6 children. They can no longer go to school because the father has been put out of action, in jail, in detention, over a case that they have not been found guilty. Remember, even with the 2010 plotters here, they have been released. I'm sure you know that. They were released after spending a very short period of time in prison, for that matter. You come to find a case where many people have been arrested randomly. Many Muslims, just to be very clear on that, many Muslims have been rounded up and then taken, and then they're in detention for ages. The kind of conditions they are living in, they have not been brought before trial. So the whole concept of you are innocent until proven guilty becomes a problem.
Lost because, disappeared from...
disappears from the whole concept of justice.
9/11.
So when that happens now, you are actually inciting even people who are innocent in their hearts to start thinking maybe the government is against us. In the Kenyan situation, there's also now the integration of the Somali population within the Kenyan society. Because despite the fact that there are Kenyan Somalis born and bred there, and they're actually Kenyan Somalis, they don't feel any other Somali, they feel
nothing
Kenyan
else
Somali.
but Kenyans.
Yes, you find that their level of integration, they're being accepted within Kenyan society is a bit wanting. You come to Uganda, you find a significantly growing Somali community, but which has integrated comfortably in Uganda. You will be surprised that a Somali might be actually more comfortable in Uganda than they would be in Kenya, where they would be Kenyan Somali. We don't have a tribe that is Somali here, but the increasing numbers, you find that they've come in, they've integrated, they're doing business perfectly well, and nobody would even question them. So this in itself, I think, has to explain probably, other than putting into consideration other factors, why, for example, Uganda, despite being a target, you still find it difficult to sort of penetrate it so easily, because the line, the integration has kind of been smooth. But then there's also the involvement of local leaders into the process. There has been this whole issue where the government is coming up to say, let's be vigilant. Part of the process of dealing with terrorism is vigilance. This vigilance comes from, you go to Kenya. Kenya is a society, for 7 years I lived in Kenya studying, and family living there. But you find that you might actually not even know your next door neighbor. People live in estates, people live in flats. The kind of African camaraderie and community aspect has actually died down. In Uganda, it's different. So all these dynamics, putting aside other things like intelligence and so on, these things do play a role. Local leaders now come in, they will know who is where. This is where now the policy of, say, Nyumba Kumi used to work very seriously. You go to a place, you have to register the visitor who has come to visit you. It looked really, very dictatorial and very controlling, but it ensured the policy that would allow to know who is where. But also knowing your neighbor, because there are times you live with your neighbors and you don't even know them, or even having access to them, Charles.
We need to take a quick commercial break, Kasim. Thank you very much. We'll pick this up in a moment. We'll be right back. You're still watching the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing the attack by terrorists in Kenya. Left 21 people dead. Actually, among one of the people who was caught in that mayhem is the former general manager for this very station, Agi Konde. Yes, the Daily Monitor told her story on what they went through with her entire team that she works with, and they have an office within that same complex. It's not just the Dusit Hotel.
Yeah.
It's a complex that has offices and other facilities around it, which was attacked. But I want to come back to you. Kasim was talking about the systems that exist here that may not exist in Kenya. The significance of the local council and chairperson. The significance of people knowing who is who. The danger with that has been argued. When does it go beyond tracking terrorists, satisfying political interests, and persecuting political opponents in the name of dealing with terrorism? The other question has been that does it make a difference how a government evolves in a particular country? Kenya stands out uniquely because Kenya inherited colonial structures and has continued with those colonial structures. Some people watching the response of the Kenyan security forces, apart from the confusion that they were involved in during the Westgate attack, watching those security, those members of the KDF and the police go in there, and knowing how even the Ugandan police or the UPDF would have walked in there, and people say, but these guys, seriously, they could have done better, because if the terrorists were a little bit more serious or more sophisticated than that, they would have massacred the security forces. Just watching.
Well, with all due respect to the Ugandans, I mean, we have done incredible things. This army was previously a guerrilla army. It overthrew a sitting government. It has gone to so many countries. It has taken out governments almost. So there's a lot to say Uganda security forces are unique. But it's also unfair to argue that the Kenyans are either shabby. We have not dealt with that situation so far. We have not had a real siege in this city. So maybe it would be exposed. So I wouldn't really like, I'm not a security expert, so I wouldn't like to say the Kenyans, they know what they were doing. The last bombing here, our forces were not even given a chance to show themselves in action. So let's hope there will be no such occasion when a mall here will be sieged and we have to rescue people. I hope it doesn't have to happen one day. But I believe our security forces are good. But I still maintain that when it comes to al-Shabab, particularly in Somalia, with all the victories the foreign armies have registered, as you said, there is no evidence that the Somalis are ready to take care of their situation. And that's actually, for example, a country like Uganda, which has prided itself in sorting out our issues without foreign help.
Yeah.
And even we don't want you of any foreign intervention. Why should we believe that foreign armies are going to sort out Somalia? And moreover, foreign armies where there are a bit of issues of religious differences, or they are largely Muslim, these foreign armies are largely Christian, so that is also an issue. Some may even argue we are all Africans, but the Somalis are slightly different. So all those emotions play up. So how long? I wish even when the UPDF and other KDF and the Burundians are there, they could just create maybe bases to and protect themselves more, and let the so-called national army really show itself. No? Let them take the lead and let them be overrun, then maybe you come out and rescue them. But right now, it's really saying these guys, and I don't know. It's a very difficult situation to say where we are going with al-Shabab in Somalia.
Kasim, you're itching to say something, then I'll come to Lillian.
Yeah, mine was, I mean, Echo mentioned a little bit on this, on the Kenyan forces, and you actually, I think, did mention it. The way they were moving, and you think if the terrorists were more organized, they could have finished them. Actually, I need to applaud the Kenyans, because what has happened is at this time, following, for example, Westgate or even Garissa, there was, yes, well, there might have been issues of proximity that Nairobi is much nearer in comparison to, say, Garissa. But the level of response this time was much more coordinated. All the people that were being pulled out were being registered before they could leave. So families could easily trace. There was communication, the way the media was allowed to sort of, be around, behind the lines, but being able to report in. this situation was actually sort of like drills had gone into preparing it. What has actually, hurt me most was the fact that there was intelligence on this seat, and yet the attack went ahead. So that said something. But it also says something about how militant organizations work.
But doesn't that also say something about the nature of terror attacks?
That's what I was that's what I was just adding, that even, you can see London is very well protected. You'll have all the cameras, all the systems, all the intelligence. Someone still manages to come as far as the parliament, and comes and kills people around parliament. So with terrorists, because of their purpose and intention, by nature, they will be able to find some ways. What we could do probably is cut down on the number of casualties. But also, very importantly for me, I still think intelligence gathering and intelligence interpretation. Because it's one thing to have the intelligence, it's another thing to interpret what it actually means. You remember before 9/11, the code they were using, they were saying they are going to attend a wedding. So the whole talk was about the introduction. So you can imagine someone speaking in the code of Kwanjura and Katera Rume, who is the Katera Rume in this particular instance, and so on. They used that coded language that it had to be someone who would be able to be really deeply ingrained to be able to interpret that intelligence. 9/11 went ahead. So that's the nature of terror attacks, and I think it's about abilities, developing abilities, and then praying so hard, because I think it's in some instances it's just a question of time.
Lynn, I want to come back to you on the question of human rights, because the advent of terrorism at a global level has led to a lot of invasion of an abuse of human rights, not just in some of these countries, but across the globe. You've had extreme laws come into effect. In Uganda's case, you have the Anti-Terrorism Act, which was a template from the Americans. You have a bit of, which actually ropes in so many other people that shouldn't be roped in. The interpretation, the application, frisking of people at entry points, which Kenya has tried to avoid. And people think maybe that is wrong. Do you deploy troops on the streets? From 2010, we had soldiers moving in columns all across Kampala. Kampala was like a city. You'd wonder if you're in Kampala or in Kabul at some stage, because you have the military, the police at every roundabout. You have columns walking with AK-47s on the ready. At some stages, you have military tanks at some corners. And how do you strike a balance? If you're Kenya and you want to keep projecting that image of an economically successful economic hub for East Africa, you're the biggest economy, but you also want to show that you have strong security presence.
Yes.
How do you strike the balance?
I think we need to, the civilian and the military population, we need to learn to work together as a team for the sake of having everyone protected. So our understanding of the presence of the military on the streets sends fear in our minds and in our lives. So in situations where, like what happened in Kenya, if they saw soldiers on the street, I think it should promote a sense of security somehow. But we have this perception that once you see a soldier, with police we are very comfortable. But when you see a soldier, there's something wrong. Definitely. It registers in your head that there's an insecurity somewhere. So I think to the population, they need to inform the population that the presence of soldiers in a street or in town or wherever it is does not mean an insecurity, that you should live in fear, but it should mean that these are people who are on the streets ready to protect you should anything happen. So the population, the relationship between the civilians population and the military population needs to be bridged, so that people understand that the security forces are here to protect us from issues like al-Shabab attacking us.
But how about the issue of abuses then? Abuses of rights. Yes,
should we just trust that the security is there to protect you?
That's why I'm saying that we need to be informed that their presence is there for our protection, not to harm us.
But Charles, I think with the terrorists, deploying the army may not necessarily help so much, because they are, as we have said, they are not so much worried about being killed. They are more, and if the army is not really able to see who is trying to enter where, and concentrate on having either, maybe the cameras may do a better job if they are being well controlled in identifying who is moving and with what intentions. But most of the deployment in Kampala, of course, some people thought was a political, dealing with political terrorism than the real terrorism.
So I still think that the presence of the soldiers on the streets should be communicated to the people. Why are they there on the streets? And should there be any abuse of human rights?
Isn't that the easier part? To communicate and say, you know, we're living in the age of terrorism. So we're deploying these guys simply because we have to avert terror threats. And you can actually call briefings at the media center, and all the government officials can come and give briefings on plots that have been averted when they have been invented by the political the political strategy committee to try and contain in a country where you have you're not allowing free demonstration, you're not allowing a lot of free political expression.
Yes.
How do you maintain the balance? Because for Kenya's case, the balance is not to scare away investors.
Yeah.
Which should be the same with Uganda.
In Uganda's case, I mean, the absence of overt security is not to send a wrong image to investors and people.
Tourists.
And tourists.
Yes.
In the case of Uganda, it might be interpreted to mean, okay, you're dealing with politics here. You could take that to Rwanda, you could take that to Tanzania now, especially under Magufuli. Yeah. You could take that, it could get worse if you took it to Bujumbura, for example, if you take it to South Sudan. I mean, the complexities. How do you strike a balance?
You see, we have created an environment whereby we don't trust each other. And to try to strike a balance, we need a lot of effort to actually convince the population that the presence of security or the UPDF on the streets is for our own good. But we are discussing this because it hasn't befallen us. We don't understand exactly what Kenya has gone through. Had the Kenya situation been in Uganda, trust me, when we would see a UPDF soldier on the streets, we would be comfortable that actually this person is protecting us. But our situation so far is very different from what is happening in Kenya. So when we see them on the streets, they're government soldiers. They're not there to protect us.
Okay.
So relating the presence of soldiers on our streets without experiencing what Kenya has experienced is a little bit hard.
Thank you. We'll switch this discussion to the Democratic Republic of Congo, and then we'll end with Ugandan issues. I forgot to announce at the beginning that the Democratic Party announced a major merger with two other entities, the Social Democrats Party and the PDP. We'll discuss that briefly as well. We did discuss the Democratic Republic of Congo just last week. Kasim, did you see it turning out the way it has turned out? Any surprises for you?
Contradictions maybe, because last week when we were here, the African Union hadn't pronounced itself, you'll remember. SADC had pronounced, and they were suggesting that there should be a recount of the vote. They go to AU, and the surprise, very big statement that actually I didn't expect to be coming from the African Union, but probably they had seen what we hadn't seen. The African Union was calling upon the Independent Electoral Commission of the DRC to not to announce the final results. And the question then was, why? Many of us were sort of thinking, are they going to start and do some diplomatic footwork probably to try to avert what might be a difficult situation? And then CENI throws a new spanner into the works, which has actually brought in a very interesting element. The Independent Electoral Commission decides 2 days after the African Union to announce, the Constitutional Court, pronounces itself on the vote, because the case had been taken to court and they upheld the results that had been announced. So immediately that came out, we start hearing from the different regional leaders especially. I think the first message was from President Ramaphosa from South Africa. The next one was from Uhuru Kenyatta. Then it was from President Kagame, I think. And then we've just seen from President Pierre Nkurunziza. This is all quite crucial considering these are quite close neighbors, especially the East African community as well. But I haven't heard from Uganda's president.
From Uganda's president and the Rwandan president.
The Rwandan president, I think I've seen a tweet to that effect, if I'm not wrong.
The drama around the African Union honor. 1 minute you're saying,
Don't.
wait a minute, we doubt the results, don't make an announcement, we need to wait. And then the court, actually they called it serious doubts about the results. And then the next thing you have is congratulatory messages flowing in. Now I think they're competing because now they're beginning, the frequency is increasing. The results.
Look, Charles, I think the UN, the AU, and all these other international bodies have largely lost their influence in the world. Of course, because they are constituted by people who largely don't have moral authority to police each other when the time comes to police. Because AU is a collection of different kinds of political formations. Some are democratic, you may argue, some are raw dictatorships, some are monarchies, some are what have you. So it becomes so hard. I think increasingly it's about might is right in many of these countries. People will watch and see whether after declaring yourself the winner, you are able to contain the situation, especially in the capital, whether the army is on your side, and somehow people start living with that situation. That's the reality. It may be morally repugnant, but in many countries that's what will ultimately happen. They are assessing Tshisekedi as the backing of the army via Kabila, and the capital people are celebrating rather than protesting. So why should we continue saying that he's not the winner? No, there have been so many, in quotes, genuine winners in Africa, but who have, at the end of the day, people just say, have a shoulder, cry on it. There's nothing we can do about
Charles, I think that is just actually talking about what the Burundian president has just tweeted. I think that was the tweet from President Pierre Nkurunziza.
I was sharing the tweet with him here, and seeing the comment from President Ramaphosa, and Sadak has congratulated Tshisekedi. Lillian.
I think we need to really appreciate what has happened in the Congo. We need to emulate it in our country, and the rest of the leaders, African Union or SADC, whatever it is, who anyway, for those who are asking that they should wait to announce the winner, I think they should take several seats and keep quiet and now listen to Congo. I believe Congo has, DRC has something to communicate to us. It is their stage, it is their time to shine. So all these other small talks about what has happened in Congo should stop. Let Congo be given a chance.
They seem to have good reasoning. When we were discussing last week here, you have two provinces that haven't even voted. Between them, they have 1.2 million voters. The difference between the winner and the runner-up who's protesting this result is less than 600,000 votes.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, 600,000 is a bit on the higher side. Yes. Is that small margin?
Yeah.
And leaders are saying, but how do you disenfranchise these two regions? Well, Felix Tshisekedi will be sworn in on Tuesday. So he'll become president.
I wish I was attending.
The Constitutional Court, the Constitutional Court pronounced itself yesterday on this result. The Congolese Constitution allows for the declaration of a president and the swearing in, even when some areas haven't voted yet. But and what you're saying, I hear you. You're caught within a rock and a hard place if you're an African leader, especially if you have changed your own constitution to stay on longer. Which is the case of the current chairman of the African Union, President Paul Kagame, the Ugandan president, who has projected himself as the moral leader within at least the Great Lakes region. If you're Burundi and you have also shifted goalposts, you're in a very difficult place to pronounce yourself on a country that actually has gone through the process of an election, has had an opposition person win that election and be declared the winner, and another opposition person is protesting the result.
Unprecedented. The first time in Africa. The first time for an opposition candidate to reach an election.
So you're wondering who actually rigged this election and for who and why? How do you navigate this? You also have a leader, an incumbent, who has said, okay, the constitution said I shouldn't continue. I have tried to manipulate it. I have no other way out. You could only extend himself for 2 years. How does the African Union position itself?
For me, I believe the African position should step aside and just watch. If the change that has taken place is for the good of the country, and the leader is able to hold whatever it is that he has inherited in one position or in peace, the African position should African Union should step aside and just watch.
Alternatively, they should put their guns where their mouths are. We saw this in Gambia.
Shoot their teeth out.
They have to put their boots on the ground. They know, at least whoever is the president knows that if it's they suspect Kabila has fixed this for Tshisekedi because Kabila has the army, he has the police and what have you. You have to put boots on the ground, as they would say, to stop that from happening. You must take out Kabila and the whole army. Can you do that?
The unique position of the Democratic Republic of Congo is that at one point, 11 African countries had troops in that country.
And they failed to sort it out.
The unique position of the Congo is that it still has the largest United Nations mission. Not just the largest and longest staying United Nations peacekeeping mission in the world. It has failed to resolve the issues of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, back to you, because you have all these...
I was just saying, the last time I think the elections were said the incumbent was trying to fiddle with the outcome was in Gambia, and there was threat of force. So I'm saying, if the AU wants to go the same path, they should do it. But if they are not able to do it, they should just let the Congolese do it.
The challenge with the Gambia example, that was coming in. No, the challenge with the Gambia example is that it's a tiny little country with a population of about 1.2 million.
1.2 million.
Yes, 1.2 million. It's a strip.
Mostly
sun-based. Senegal could just move it.
No, if you're in Senegal, you can walk across the Gambia. It's famous for producing groundnuts and the seaport. Those are the major things that it has. It doesn't have much hinterland, doesn't have much population, it doesn't have much in terms of resources.
No, but also the Gambia, Charles, with the Gambia, the mistake that Yahya Jammeh did is he acknowledged his defeat.
Yes.
And then post which he decides to change his mind.
Exactly.
So you see, there was precedent. In this particular case, you have Shadari going to congratulate Tshisekedi, in the first instance. But also the fact that now I think the biggest dilemma now is for the Catholic Church. How does it clean its image after the Constitutional Court now pronounces itself, because it's the highest authority? There is no other area of appeal where they could go post this. So the Catholic Church finds itself now in a very difficult situation where it has now to prove its popularity and influence on the incoming president, because they have shown a side.
But Kasim, you're also dealing with a country that is the most resourced.
Yes.
The most resourced country possibly in the world in terms of natural resources. And everybody, their neighbors, international community, since time immemorial has been looking at those resources. Where does this leave the likes of Moise Katumbi? Where does this leave the likes of Jean-Pierre Bemba? And all those other groups like the M23, and all those groups that PUZIK and others that were operating in the Eastern Congo.
Well, what I find interesting is the fact that I think Tshisekedi has a good point to start. Remember, before he broke away to go independently, he was part of the coalition of opposition parties that went to Switzerland, where they met to try to find a common candidate. It was only after he realized that he had not been chosen to be the opposition candidate that he decided to go it alone. So in terms of talking terms, there's nothing that says that now the Tshisekedi that met with Martin Fayulu, Jean-Pierre Bemba and Moise Katumbi cannot meet again. So, I mean, for me, that is the starting point. The second point is now Tshisekedi knows the kind of burden he's carrying. For him to try to address all these particular conflicting interests, M23 in Uganda since they were defeated in 2013, 2014, they have been in Uganda, they've been trying to go back. Is there a point to them not going back? Could there be a renegotiation? Because it means some of them wanted to go and be reintegrated into the national army, and that became a bit of an issue.
Yes.
So if that is the issue...
No, they were sold a deal that partly was struck here in Munyonyo.
Yes, and another
which
one
was
in
not
Nairobi.
Another one in Nairobi
Which
that was
was
not
never
honored in
respected.
Kinshasa.
Yes.
A few of their members that they sent into Kinshasa, into the national army, were actually
rounded up.
up.
Yeah.
Yes, so they just hung them up.
And just what I want to say, by taking the position, took the AU also risks creating, instead of having a Congo with a number of rats, sort of, I mean, having a tame president. Now, when Tshisekedi comes in under siege, he becomes another typical strongman, because he now feels these people are being propped by foreign forces. You must use force to crush them. So he may not become the president he would have become. He's a president who now comes under siege, and naturally the instinct is survival. He becomes another
We need to take a
dictator.
commercial break. I'm afraid we need to take a commercial break. But I'll take a message from Ronald Balugire, who says there's need for investment in ideological realignment within Islam by the right-thinking members of that community. Distancing themselves from the acts of terrorism is not enough if there are no intentional attempts to sensitize the young people about the true pillars that found the Islamic faith. Governments too need to make attempts in dealing with the causes of extremist tendencies like unemployment. That's Ronald Balugire. Someone here says AU should avoid playing double standards. Elections have been violent in Zimbabwe, in Uganda, in Kenya, in Zambia, and they have been quiet. Why make noise over Congo? Kabila's government, through Lambert Mende, information minister, has welcomed the court declaration, and to Congolese, it's new beginning under Felix Tshisekedi. This same viewer says, okay, no, just take that. I'll take one more message. Someone here says, al-Shabab issue will be answered only when the Somalia question is resolved. The latter will be reached at when Somalis are left to answer the Somalia question. The peacekeeping forces need to change the rules of engagement from the front line to training the Somali National Army. Uganda has been in Somalia for 10 years. Yes, there are results, but not sustainable. We'll take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll be coming back local to discuss issues in Uganda, and Makerere will be one of the major issues, of course, with the merger of the Democratic Party together with the SDP and the PDP. After a short break. Welcome back to this last segment of the Fourth Estate, and we're coming back local to deal with issues in Uganda. And to begin with is a merger between the Democratic Party and the Social Democratic Party and the PDP. The PDP is the political party of Abed Wanika, and SDP is the party of Michael Mavike, the cumbersome Michael Mavike. Honor. This merger, SDP is actually a breakaway faction of the Democratic Party. So they are more or less come back home. Does this change anything for the Democratic Party? What does Wanika add?
In the context of Ugandan politics, I am more inclined to believe in individual merits, that the only people who have a chance in the post-Museveni era, if I may, that's my belief, will be those who will be seen as individuals, not as necessarily as groups. And there's actually a conspiracy theory that this merger is to neutralize people power, because both of them are supposed to be gunning for Buganda as the key battleground with the NRM.
So do you think does it cut it?
That there are some, I mean, these are conspiracy theories that some of the people merging with DP are trying to create what they think would be a counterbalance to people power, which is said to be extremist and radical. So those are some of the allegations. But I don't really think any merger can change the dynamics of any political party until when they get a leader who kind of sparks major excitement, you know? The way sort of basically as an FDC, maybe Bobby Wine is for power, and of course Yoweri Museveni in the NRM. There must always be an exciting figure. So I don't know whether that merging is going to produce that leader for DP. I'm not sure.
Lillian, what do you think?
I think DP is trying to be relevant. It had ceased to be relevant, so they're trying to shine their light, which had dimmed out, and I don't think they're going anywhere. The merger was just for show. After that, it's still going to be the usual, it's all about me thing in the DP. So, and I haven't seen any leader in the DP that can actually entice me to join DP. When they had their reunion party, it was the usual DP of we get excited, we gather, and then we shake hands, hug, pretend to be together. But I don't think there's any togetherness in DP, especially when there are people like Bwanika who have no sense of belonging. Anywhere the pendulum takes them, they fall. If it goes this side, so I don't think DP is...
Kasim, what do you think? The major question here for me is, like Lillian says and Ona has said, the major question is, what does SDP and Michael Mabike, what does PDP and Abed Bwanika bring to the DP as it is? And what do those bring to the DP, and what are they finding that will create that groundswell that they hope to raise them to be able to become an entity that can actually challenge for leadership in this country?
My personal reading in this was the fact that this is a kind of a realignment towards the upcoming elections, whatever the outcome. Parties or smaller parties, the moment they start coming up to join, yes, they might be insignificant, but as individuals, I mean, Abed Bwanika did garner some votes, I think about 80,000 votes during the last election. If I'm right.
Not sure about that figure. I think about 40,000.
40,000 was it?
Yes.
It was like 81,000. Okay.
We'll check.
With the numbers, I think Abed Bwanika, I mean, listening to him, you see he had a sort of a program that many people actually were sort of saying it's a good plan if he had the right platform. But he had failed on that. Michael Mabike pulled out, you know, at the moment Norbert Mao was elected as chairman of DP. For me, I think the reading is that this was a victory for Norbert Mao instead of being a victory for, say, Abed Bwanika or Michael Mabike, because Michael Mabike pulled out the moment Norbert Mao had been just elected as the president of DP. The fact that Norbert Mao is still president and then you have Mabike returning, it's the prodigal son who has decided to come back home. But it is a realignment towards upcoming elections. Where DP will swing, I think, is another interesting thing to think about, because DP could actually end up being with NRM despite being an opposition party. Following this iPod summit that happened in Munyonyo, anything is possible. So if people actually find the right platforms, who knows? As 2021 quickly approaches, I think especially with the announcement of the election roadmap, there is a likelihood that people will start realigning themselves. But I don't see much coming out of, just like my colleagues, my fellow panelists have said, I don't see much in it other than the fact that now it's DP under Norbert Mao as opposed to how we were seeing it.
One, I think you're right. Abed Bwanika almost hit 90,000. He got 89,005 votes. Yeah. Venansius Biaramrieva had, he actually rejoined the National Resistance Movement. Professor Venansius Biaramrieva, he had scored 52,798 votes. Faith Chalia got 42,833. Benon Biraro got 25,000, and Joseph Mabiri is 24,000. When you put all these numbers together, I don't want to go into this. But
they got where they were allocated.
And when Ona says that, you need to take him seriously. He's been a member of parliament, and he's also worked as the presidential press secretary. So he's been in the corridors of power better than we have been. He's joked here that he's both won an election and lost an election, and he's worked with winners of elections, so he knows the allocation process. But when I want to come back to you briefly, I think for Mao this presents something. He's struggled since he became President General of the Democratic Party to try and forge some kind of unity that has been extremely elusive to him for all the time he's been there. To be able to bring back Michael Mabeke and put him in the Democratic Party. I don't know how much. Michael Mabeke was a member of parliament for March India at some stage. He lost that election. They've struggled to get leaders. They've got, I think, a few leaders at local government level. The SDP has got 1 or 2 leaders at local government level, but they haven't done much. And even Michael Mabeke's star as a political actor has kind of faded completely. You would think that even Abed Wanika's star, he's become a little bit, from comments you hear from people and his show, I think, on CBS, he's become a little bit more radical, especially against colleagues within the opposition. He's become kind of extreme. I do not know whether his PDP has something it can actually put on the table and say, here are the numbers, here are elected leaders, here are strategies that can drive, can give what Leon was talking, give that drive to the Democratic Party and take it to the next level.
Yeah, you must give it to Mao. First of all, amongst all these partners he has, he's the one with a political record, stretching back to university politics. He was a guild president, he was a member of parliament, he was a district chairman.
And Abed Wanika has contested at least 3 elections in this country at the president.
Yeah, I'm saying for him he has contested and won something. and if he's arguably the greatest political orator in the country at the moment. And if elections were to be won purely on oratory, I think he would really have a very fair chance in an election. Unfortunately, you know, the elections are not won on oratory in this country, on ideas. There are a lot of emotional things. It comes with a bit of ethnic baggage because of the history of the country. So, but otherwise, Mao is seriously a fighter, and you must give it to him.
When you say that, people will say, people who listen to the presidential debate, the one for the last election and the one that was done for the previous election, though it was a bit low-key. They would argue and say that Bwanika seemed to have solid programs.
But
and
Mao was not in that race.
And a clear manifesto. So if you put the greatest orator with a guy who actually knows what needs to be put in a manifesto, does that mean anything?
Again, if it was by speeches, it would mean a lot. But there are a lot of factors in our elections at all levels. A great speech does not necessarily win an election.
A good manifesto, a great speaker doesn't sway it for voters in this country.
I think for Ugandans, we get excited the way you communicate with us. So Ben may have had a very good manifesto, but the way he communicates, the way Ugandans understand him would be different. So I don't think he would win an election because of a great manifesto.
Of course, he lost the election.
Yes,
he lost the election.
He lost the
at least
election.
3 times.
So he needs to find a way in which he can relate, sell his manifesto to the Ugandans, and Ugandans are encouraged to believe in him. But yes, he has a great manifesto, but the relationship between him and the voters is still not that solid. Yeah.
Kasim, let me come back to you. How do you see politics shaping up? What are the next mergers we should expect? I mean, how does, because you're drawing closer to an election, to the next election, every day that passes. Yes, you don't have the electoral reforms that should shape what the election should look like, but I think those who think they will be playing, will be part of the electoral process are already out there mobilizing for themselves. President Museveni and the NRM, you can predict where that will end. They will arrive. You'll not see a lot of activity within the NRM now trying to look for, to open up space for candidates. But the candidate will emerge, or candidates will emerge when the party finally meets, which will be maybe sometime next year. Yes. So you think this sets the pace for what we might be seeing going forward in 2019?
Last week when we were having a discussion, I did mention about the Electoral Commission roadmap. And you said that actually even with the previous elections we've had roadmaps.
Yes.
But they were kind of silent. This time around, I don't know why, whether we are just more active and more out there. But the fact that we have 2 years now to prepare for the elections has sent sort of waves around. People are getting excited. People are trying. And this is why I was saying this particular return of SDP and then the coming in of PDP was more about political realignment. There is likelihood that we might actually see some surprises. What if? What if? It is just the if. What if President Museveni decided to do a Kabila at the last minute?
Can he?
What if?
No.
That's the point. What if? Nobody saw that coming with Kabila because we were hoping that he might have found a way around to play with the constitution and be able to run again.
He tried and it failed.
He did try.
Yes.
What if? So it still comes back to that. What if, for example, President Museveni decided? Because I think the whole idea is when we talk about the succession issue, which is always a very sensitive issue here, the thing is, once you name a successor at this particular moment in time, then you become a lame duck president for the next 2 years until the next elections. Because people are already looking at the next person instead of looking at you to whatever do with your programs. So I'm just thinking around this time, there's actually quite a lot that could happen. We might see some figures that we have not known coming up. We know the obvious ones, but the unobvious ones sometimes do come up.
Okay.
And I'm thinking we might have some surprise come 2021, God willing.
Yes, you seriously have to invoke God. Didier is watching us from Ishak and he says, just as cooperative unions give individuals collective bargaining power in the market, DP is looking for bargaining power in 2021. In 1980, they chose Museveni over to fight UPC. 2001, they chose Reform Agenda. 2016, they chose JPAM. They are now targeting a merger with either Muntu Alliance for National Transformation or Bobby Wine's People Power. DP has good individuals who are like gold in a sinking ship. A fairly harsh verdict here. No, but this history is quite interesting.
Yes,
that you've always been passing it on someone else. Because President Museveni went to the bush in 1980, not because he lost his own election, but because he believed DP had lost that election. And he didn't go to fight for DP to hand over back to DP. He fought and took it for himself. Gentlemen and lady, we need to switch and have a brief discussion about developments in Makerere University, especially with the latest suspension, which has been making, it's been rolling social media discussions, the suspension of the chairperson of the Makerere University Academic Staff Association. Honor, you were once a member of the academic staff of Makerere University. When your leader is sent on suspension by the Vice Chancellor of the university, what does that mean?
Well, I guess the Makerere...
It's an interesting letter. I'll be looking it up.
The letter that you wrote to him. It's very different from the Makerere that we have today. The Vice Chancellor was here with us not long ago. Of course, he was defensive, but clearly Makerere has moved from being a marketplace of ideas, first of all, to literally a market. I mean, in all respects, you can, geographically, you can find kiosks selling everything on Makerere. There's talk of selling marks for other things, there's everything. So I think we can now not even blame individuals in Makerere. It's a big crisis and it's not isolated. They have just released PLA results, they will still release O-level results and A-level. The pattern of public institutions, public schools collapse is what is playing out in Makerere. It's only that it's much more spotlighted, but it's clear that government management of any institution of learning will always come with the kind of baggage we are seeing in Makerere. It's down to the issues of money. Much of the debate is about money. The Mwasa suspended or not chief is saying he's trying to, the Vice Chancellor is covering up corruption. So there's a lot of money issues at Makerere. That clearly shows that it's a management problem because it's also seen to be anybody's money, which is public money. But I hate to say that the only solution long term is you must change Makerere either to become a private university or some other way of managing it. It can't continue in crisis. And there are a lot of other universities that seem to move on without issues. Why Makerere? Why Makerere?
Lillian,
Yes,
the Vice Chancellor, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, was singled out for prize by President Yoweri Museveni during this just concluded 69th graduation of Makerere University. We need to congratulate Makerere on that because they pulled off a week-long graduation ceremony that stand out. I think possibly the highest number of PhDs and master's students coming out this time round out of Makerere University. But the prize particularly was for dealing with indiscipline, ending a culture of strikes, Makerere being known as a place where strikes happen every other day.
And there's
if it's
just
not
a new one now being declared.
Yes, well, it hasn't actually ended because they always suspend, they don't end a strike. If it could start with academic staff, then it's picked up by non-academic staff, then it's picked up by students, and then the cycle continues. It doesn't matter where it starts from, but it starts from somewhere. And the Vice Chancellor, in his 1 year at the helm, has tried to deal with that. The methods have come up for criticism, serious criticism, because he's gone after students, suspended them, or forced them to agree to very tough suspension terms if they want to go back and complete their courses. Now with the lecturers, when we had him here, he had just announced the firing of 45 members of academic staff. Some of them haven't been teaching. They're genuine cases, but people say you're hiding behind genuine cases to also punish those who are critical of your leadership. Now the latest is the suspension of the chairperson of Mwasa. The questions are, will Professor Nawangwe ride this horse up to the end?
No.
Why do you think so?
If he has that high hand in his management, at the end of the day, he's going to suspend everyone. And the way he's conducting business, to me now looks like he is satisfying the interest of the appointing authority. And for me, I would believe if you're in the position of leadership that he holds, he needs to look at the interests of Makerere first. There are people, among the people he fired, the 42 or 40 something that he fired.
45.
Yes, there are people who have been lecturing at Makerere for a long time. So that is a lot of resource that has been invested that he has thrown out of the window. And
he argued when he was here that some of those guys haven't taught for many years. Some went for further studies, finished their further studies, went on to get other jobs, but continued to go back to Makerere and collect their salary. I mean, collect that paycheck from Makerere. And he says that's the reason. His supporters say there was a lot of indiscipline growing at Makerere University, a lot of lethargy, that basically a lot of rot that he's trying to deal with. And many and his critics have said, this guy is running this university like he's running a primary school somewhere.
I mean,
I don't know which is which, but
besides running whichever way he's running it, is he doing it legally? When all these people whose services or whose employment or contracts he has terminated go to court, and the rulings are against Makerere University, at the end of the day, it's going to be the taxpayer that is paying for the mistakes that he's making. Some of these things, the decisions he's making, are decisions that can be easily remedied, and he doesn't have to be so harsh. So the way he's running the university, personally, I don't think he'll run his race for the time that he's supposed to run his race.
Kasim, Lillian raises the question of court petitions. Deus Kamunyu said his friends, his lawyers, his families are advising, and he's looking for a way out. The other time we had one of the lecturers they have petitioned Parliament. They petitioned the Speaker, and the Speaker is about to be, will be probing what has been going on at Makerere. But there was a time I was discussing this with Lillian before I came on air. Local governments got excited with the powers that they had, and were firing chief administrative officers left, center, and right. And those cows were running to court. And in most cases, they got favorable rulings from court that piled heavy costs
On local
on those local governments. I'm just imagining a university like Makerere that is already beleaguered by the resources available to it, even beyond a quarter word that goes to an individual. Now you have a whole list of individuals who will be pursuing individual cases and possibly group cases. You also have an institution that is going to have to pay heavily to engage lawyers or its legal team to defend itself. Number two is the politics of Makerere won't go away because the Vice Chancellor has acted in the way he has acted. Can Makerere afford to get bogged by court cases and those petitions and other challenges, which will now, like Ona told us, you have another strike looming or has been announced? It can, how does the Vice Chancellor navigate his way around that?
Makerere cannot, I think, afford to pay the cost for these particular, especially if we go down the legal route. The dilemma here, though, that I'm seeing is the fact that Professor Nawangwe has a commitment. He's made a commitment as to what he wants to deliver. How he delivers that, that is where the problem is. But there's also the image of Makerere as a university. When all of this, when we end up with all these court cases going on in case they are instituted, the image of the institution itself will suffer. 45 people getting, sacked. That for an image of a university of an international standing like Makerere University, it's about perception, it's about image. I think for me, the image is what is going to suffer most. Echo did use the word to say that it was the marketplace of ideas. Now it's suddenly turned into a market. That now is actually threatening now to even get worse. With
Professor Mahmoud Mamdan wrote a book and called it Scholars in a Marketplace. Yes. His title for Makerere University.
Scholars
in a marketplace.
Marketplace.
Yes.
Now it's the market itself as Echo now has sort of promoted it. But you see where that is going. So in simple terms, responding to your question, I don't think Makerere can afford. However, Professor Nawangwe has already embarked on a process that he wishes to see through, especially now with the support that he has seen from the head of state, who recommended and praised him for the kind of steps he has taken.
Because now the Muasa head is alleging that troops have been deployed to buy him from his house.
From accessing his house. But the thing is, these policies are being, that he's handing down, at whose expense?
It's Makerere.
I think that the Makerere has many stakeholders. Students, parents, the business community, the people who teach at that institution. But you're talking about firing 45 people. Some institutions have actually called for a new beginning altogether. If you think the system is so rotten that you can't clean it up, you clean up, you tell everybody to go and reapply for their jobs. It happened at Ugandan National Roads Authority, and life continued.
That's not Makerere University. That's not Makerere University. There is more to it. Now Uganda Road Authority might even be disappearing very soon, just like
because of that.
No.
Our time is out. We need to get out of here. Someone here is saying, Charles Mook alumni, Makerere University alumni of the Mawazo generation. Do you belong to that?
No.
You don't. Of the Mawazo generation must move to rescue Makerere University for the sake of posterity. The starting point is physically shifting Makerere University from the slums to Nakasongola. Watch this space. I'll take 2 messages and then we'll get out of here. These are long messages. One is on DP from Ismail Musaladu, who says, methinks that Chairman Mao's DP is trying to pull the rug off other opposition players. He is trying to position the DP as the lead party ahead of others, hoping that he may end up as the opposition flag bearer or some sort of kingmaker in 2021. Well, who you merge with and how you merge is also important in this calculation. So maybe that's what we need to evaluate as well. This is a fairly long message. I'll try to read as much of it as I can. I am sorry I joined you late, but my earnest request on DRC, the presidential polls are just superficial because it doesn't solve Congo's fundamental problem of too huge a territorial size to be efficiently administered. The Congolese, Great Lakes neighbors, the international community all want to pretend about the sheer huge ungovernable size as being the #1 challenge. Ironically, most of the disorganized and democratic countries call themselves Democratic Republic of Congo, Democratic Republic of Korea, etc. I am rising isn't a serious obstacle to any sensible settlement of the long and deep-seated Congo crisis. Not the all-powerful Kuku, Ngibedo, Mobutu Wazabanga, neither Kabila Senior nor Kabila Junior could unite Congo. It will only be an all-out war, civil or external, that will separate Congo, or a new regional war for splitting Congo, or annexation that will cool down the crisis. If not, that huge country will eternally remain a source of war, disease, and refugees, etc. For Uganda, remember the US 10 billion bill from ICJ. Thanks. Well, I'm not sure I agree with you. They're bigger countries than the Democratic Republic of Congo in the world, and they have been effectively governed for a long time. And I think even the Congo itself can be governed in spite of its size, though many people are interested in its resources and love the confusion that comes with it. Our time is out. We need to get out of here. I want to thank you very much, my panel. Onapito, thank you very much. Lillian?
Thank you.
Lillian Drabo Amari.
Yes.
That's the name. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kasim Kayira. Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight and always, and especially those who gave us feedback, and each one of you who watches this show. Thank you very much to the production crew that's here plate to deliver the show to you. From me, it's a good night.